Welcome to my channel. Today I'm here, clown mode fully activated, and I'm going to be taking the Yucca palette from Natasha Denona and comparing it with my existing eyeshadow collection. This idea I got from Hope Mess Tom. They have two different series that I believe this is based on. One they will do when they have acquired a bunch of products and they'll see how it compares to their existing collection. And then one I believe is called Face to Face, where they'll take an eyeshadow palette and see if they can recreate it. I'm either doing a version of one of those or maybe a combination of the two, but anyway, I pulled a bunch of shadows. So what I'm going to do is go shade by shade in the palette, see which is closest. Then I'm going to put all the closest shades in a palette together, swatch them side by side with the Yucca palette. Okay, so I think I'm just going to go like literally in order of the shades. So let's start with this first one, Plantasia. This is the Duochrome from the palette. It's this very sparkly and dynamic gold. And I have quite a few singles pulled. The first one that I think might be closest is Corrosion from Cleona Cosmetics. Celesta from Devinah Cosmetics. One does not. Okay, that one might actually be a bit closer. But I'm actually so impressed with how this Natasha Denona shade is comparing to these indie shadows. Do you see this? I really think in terms of texture and sparkle, it is holding its own. The next two I don't think are going to be quite as similar. This is Titan from Terra Cosmetics. Yeah, this is a lot more green gold. This is Rave from Shine by SD Cosmetics, which is really close to Titan. Just a bit more textured. Okay, and finally I have Brass from the Gold palette. So I think the closest out of these is actually Celesta from Devinah. I prefer the Natasha Denona shade. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I really do. I prefer Plantasia. I think it's a little bit more shiny and sparkly. And I like the texture a little bit more. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pull Celesta to put in this palette, and then let's go to the next shade. Calathea, I swear I tried to look some of these up, and I could not find pronunciations. So forgive me. I did learn that I was pronouncing Yucca wrong, because it means something different. So here is Calathea. This actually reminds me a lot of a shade I no longer have because it like literally shattered into smithereens and I could not recover it, but it was Mi Gente from Terra. It had this similar like green gray tone to it. So if you have that, you might have a pretty close shade to this. So the first one I have pulled is Wildlife from Sydney Grace. Oh yeah, this is like pretty close. It's a bit deeper and a little bit less green. Next one, I don't know the name of this, but it's from the Viseart Dark Mattes. Viseart shades swatched like ass. We're going to try it anyway. Alright, I just took a little bit of that top layer off. Let's try again. Okay. That is really close. So that's from the Viseart Dark Mattes. And the main difference is obviously this is not cream to powder shade, but the tone is like pretty spot on. I also have, I think this is Azoic. No, this is Troop from the Metropolis palette. It's a lot warmer. And then this is Woodlands from Dandelions Co., an indie brand. Okay, so definitely this Viseart shade. I don't have the name, so I'm going to put that in the palette. Okay, this next shade, Komorebi, was surprisingly difficult to find comparable shades to in my collection. It's probably my favorite shade in the palette. And just look at the way it like reflects light. It's also so sparkly. I've used it a few times on my eyes at this point, and I love to apply it as a wash because you see all those different colored flecks of sparkles. So anyway, it was hard to find potential comparable shades to this. The first one I have is Caesium from Terra. This is lighter, actually a bit more cool tone. This is definitely more reflective. The next one I pulled is Carving from Cleona. Okay, this is a lot more green. Interesting. This is Illusion from Shine by SD. Ooh, I put way too much on my finger. actually might be closer to Plantasia. Let me just add that back in real quick. Okay, I still think Celesta is closer to Plantasia. Okay, then I have Lime Chrome from the Gold palette. And then finally, I don't know what this one's called. It's from the Viseart Koi palette. This does not stand a chance against these other indie and Natasha Denona shades. Okay, so none of these I would say are incredibly close. I think probably out of the ones I have, Caesium is the closest. Or what do you think? That's hard to tell. I think I'm going to do Caesium. Acacia, this greenish mustardy tone. I have just like a charcuterie board of mattes over here. So I'm just going to kind of feel it out and see what might compare. Okay, so this is Troop from the Metropolis palette. That actually might be already the closest. Let's do Woodlands from Dandelions Co. again. Too deep, I think. And then I think maybe this one. Who are you? This is, I think, Vanguard. Yeah, this is Vanguard from Sydney Grace. That is definitely too brown. And then Azoic from the Metropolis palette. That is too warm. Okay, I don't know why I'm continuing to do this because I think... let me do one more. This is Backwoods from Sydney Grace. Yeah, no. Okay, I think Azoic is the clear winner here. Camu is this like neon chartreuse green. And I have a few. This is Among the Stars from Terra, one of their neons. This is like a lot more of a highlighter yellow. This is Ion. Is it Ion? Yeah, this is Ion from the Triochrome palette. This is like pretty spot on. I have, this is Arctic Lime from Terra Moons, which I don't think this will be the closest. Yeah, this is a lot more yellow. I'm going to go with Ion. Tipu, which is very similar to Acacia. I think this is the more muted version. So again, let's do, okay, this is Backwoods from Sydney Grace. Let's try that. And then we'll try Dijon from the Gold palette. And then this is Dirt Road from Sydney Grace. Ooh, that's a lot more orange. Okay. I think Dijon is the closest out of these. One of my absolute faves from this palette, Elysian. It's this very dimensional, cool toned charcoal gray. And I have a few here. I have Frozen Brown from Glam Shop. This is warmer, definitely, for sure. This is more of a brown, as one would gather from the name of it. Next, I have Mocha Twilight from Terra Moons. This is deeper, definitely has more of an opaque base, but definitely a similar vibe. And then finally, I didn't include this in my first video on the Yucca palette, but I realized afterwards that this shade from the mini retro palette, I forget the name of it, is quite similar as well. So it's between Mocha Twilight and this shade from the mini retro. I actually think the mini retro shade is closest. Okay, next, Valley. This is one of the warmer tone mattes. It's still in that like mustard hue, but it's a lot more of a like neutral tone. So let's try Dirt Road from Sydney Grace. Too colorful, I think. So let's go back to this column. This is from the Viseart Dark Mattes. I don't know the name of it. That is pretty close. Let's do, this is Vanguard from Sydney Grace again. The Natasha Denona shade is lighter for sure. We'll do Azoic again. This is from the Metropolis palette. So far, that's looking like it's the closest, but we'll keep trying a few more. Here's another from the Dark Mattes palette. No. So we'll do Azoic. That's definitely the closest out of the ones I have. Okay, next we have Citrine. This is another like chartreuse acid yellow tone, but it's deeper and a little bit less vibrant. So I'm going to try Shire from Terra Moons again. Okay, so this is lighter and a bit more vibrant. And let's try Vert from the Triochrome palette. Okay, so that's like pretty spot on in my opinion. So we will do Vert. I took French for years and I cannot pronounce that. Okay, next, this is the only like metallic shimmer in the palette. It's called Ray. And it's just like a greenish gold. So I have 2 shades pulled here. I think these are both from the Sydney Grace Mountain Trail palette. We have Light My World and Escape. And they have like stuff on top of them. Let me wipe that off first so it doesn't affect the swatch. Okay. So let's do Light My World. Okay, and then Escape. So neither of these are really close in my opinion. I think Escape is slightly closer, especially in terms of that like reflective gold quality. So I'm gonna do that. Okay, next row we have Flax, which is a pretty neutral, maybe a bit cooler toned deep brown. Let's start with, this is that one from the Viseart Dark Matte again. I feel like that has more of a like cool tone hue to it. So let's try, this is Log from the Gold palette. I almost see like a bit of an olive quality to the shade Flax, which is interesting. Like I didn't notice that at first, but now when I see it compared to other deep brown shades, I'm picking up on it. This is called Enjoy the Ride from Sydney Grace. That feels more gray to me. And then this is from Viseart Neutral Mattes. This again feels more gray to me. I think the closest is probably this top one from the Viseart Viseart Dark Mattes palette. Okay, next Fuchsia. This is that like vibrant mustardy orange tone in the cream to powder formula. I mentioned in my video it has like some resistance to it. I have tried using it on my eyes between then and now, and I noticed when I was applying it on my eyes, it did have like, it tugged a little, and I have not experienced that with any of the other cream to powder formulas. I mean, I ended up applying fine, but spoiler alert for my review, it doesn't perform the same as, the experience is not the same as working with other cream to powder shades I've tried. So let's go ahead and try Dirt Road from Sydney Grace again. Okay, so this now is a lot more muted and yellow. Okay, we're going to try this one from Shine by SD. It's called Creamsicle. Okay, that's a good contender. And we're going to try Plutonium from the Triochrome palette. Okay, those are probably the only close ones. I do think Plutonium is the closest, so we'll do that. Okay, next, this is what inspired me to even make this video. So I don't know, Maria, if you watch my videos, but she asked me to compare this shade, Macchia, to a shade from my collab with Shine by SD, Fauna. So let me do that as my first comparison. And they were surprisingly quite similar. So obviously the main difference is that Fauna has a shift. I don't know if it's going to pick up as well in this lighting, but it shifts to like a green and teal. And it does look lighter here. When I was comparing it earlier, they looked pretty spot on. So I think it does depend on your lighting. But from straight on, they have that like desaturated, olivey, weathered gold quality to them. And they are pretty sparkly. I also pulled, this is Cosmic Noon from Terra Moons. This has that very interesting peach flip to it. So not as similar. And then I have Hyperion from Terra Moons. This is a black-based multichrome. This to me reads a lot cooler toned. And then finally, this is one from the Viseart Koi palette. Don't know the name. Okay, so interesting how Fauna is reading very differently in this lighting setup than it did earlier on my stories. But I do think, like, in person, they are so similar. Just Fauna obviously has that teal shift. You can kind of see better here. We're going to do Ixia next, which is another orangey tone. It's a bit more like toasted caramel color. And I'm going to start with, this is Sundown from the Bronze palette. This is from the Viseart Dark Mattes palette. This reads a little bit more vibrant to me. And then finally, this is called Honesty from Sydney Grace. Okay, that's way off. I don't even know why I pulled that. So Sundown to me looks the closest. Actually, let me try this one matte from the Dark Mattes. Okay. So yeah, to me, Sundown from the Bronze palette is reading the closest. Okay, finally we have Willow, which is this cool tone, like evergreen color. Is that a thing, or did I make that up? Yeah, evergreen, right? That's a color. So I have Mantra from the Zendo palette, which is quite similar. It's just in the cream to powder formula. I have, I think this is called Royal. Yeah, Royal from the Metropolis palette. This is more of a true green. Another cream to powder. This is called Noble Fur. Yep, Noble Fur from Dandelions Co. And then Who You Are from the Viseart Dark Mattes palette. This is another like forest green. So Mantra to me is like pretty spot on. Obviously the biggest difference is the formula. So I am going to choose Mantra. Okay, so here is the original palette, and here is my attempt to recreate it. So I think what I'll do is swatch them side by side, and then I will also do a look with one on one eye and one on the other, and then we can see. Okay, here's everything. Swatch side by side. I mean, they're pretty close. Like, I'm a clown. I did not need to buy this palette, but I'm so glad I have it because I freaking love Natasha Denona palettes, and I know I'm going to use this. Also, I've mentioned this before, but like the fact that they can pop out and be used interchangeably with other Natasha Denona shades, I will get my money's worth out of this palette. Let me do some up close of the side by side, and then I'll get into the look. Okay, so I don't really have a plan. There's a couple shades I know I definitely want to use. I want to use this guy, one of these mustardy tones, the gold, and then I think I want to use Como Ruby too. So we'll probably just build a look around that. We'll do the Yucca palette on this eye and my Dupe palette on this eye. So I'm going to use the same brush just to mitigate any confounding variables, and I will just wipe off the brush in between each one. So I'm going to start with this brush from the Makeup Shack. Shout out Millie for the recommendation. This is the T87. It's just like a fluffy blending brush. And I'm going to start on this eye with Tipu. I'm just going to kind of build it up at my crease. So for my other palette, I'm going to take, this is Dijon from the Gold palette. Please do not perceive my fingernail. So I'm going to do the same thing and take about the same amount of product. Tap out on the excess. And I need a mirror. Just going to build it up in my crease again. So right away, I'm noticing this is definitely coming across a lot more yellow. I don't know if it's going to pick up on camera. But on this side, I see more of a green. And on this side, I see more of a yellow. But we'll see how much that impacts the overall look in the end. I'm going to take this smaller brush, also from the Makeup Shack. It is called the T63. And I'm going to take Willow and start to build up my outer corner, add a little bit of depth. Just kind of like work that into the crease. I'm going to add a little bit more. And you know what? I hate doing my lower lash line. I just don't like the way it looks on me, but I think maybe we will do one for this look. Let me clean off my brush, and then I'm going to go in with, this is Mantra from the Zendo palette. Interesting. Alright. Citrine on the lower lash line. I almost tried to use this as a mirror again. Sorry, I'm out of frame. Vert from the Triochrome palette, so we'll just do that again. Definitely similar, but I see a difference. And then let's do, for the inner corner, I'm not doing this in a really weird order, whatever. The inner portion, I'm going to wipe off my brush again. Camo. So again, I'm tapping my brush in here. This is like one of my new favorite brushes ever. The T63 from Makeup Shack. I feel like I have a decent amount of lid space, but it's just so good for like working in those areas where it's kind of hard to get to. So anyway, let me go ahead and work in Camo. My inner portion. And then I think I'm going to go back in with Tipu just to kind of meld them together. Okay, I feel like that looks fine. Okay, so now I'm going to go with Ion from the Triochrome palette. Okay, so with just the mattes down, this eye is looking a lot more green to me, and this one is a lot warmer leaning. But let me know what you think so far. My eyelids are crusty from, once again, doing way too much. So I just put Fiorine Pixie Epoxy on the back of my hand. I'm just going to tap a tiny bit on my eye. So let that dry for like 2 seconds. I'm going to go in with Plantasia. I don't know if I should go. I think I'm actually going to take my finger and just tap on a tiny bit. Actually, I am going to go with a brush. Let me do the same thing on my other eye. So I'm going to take Pixie Epoxy again. Celesta from Devinah. And I'm going to take my finger again. To me, this is reading a lot more of a yellow gold. And I actually think this shade is a little bit more dimensional. And I prefer the way this looks on my eye. Como Revi. And just take a really tiny amount once again. Tap it on. This is so pretty. Let's do my trusty Unknown VH brush. Going in with Caesium from Terra Moons. I'm actually going to tap up a tiny bit on my hand. Okay. She's very potent. Going in with this brush. Let's try to diffuse it out. I probably shouldn't have used glitter glue, but I was trying to be consistent. I'm taking a pencil brush and getting like the very inner crevice of my eye. I'm going to do it again with Como Revi. I'm going to take UPS guy, just went up to my door. Maquia. And we will go in with Fauna. Trying to remember to stay in frame. So they do look more similar here. I mean, this part of my eye is not as convex as like my actual eyelid, like the mobile eyelid part. So you're not really going to see the shift from this angle. So they do look a lot more similar from here. And then the last thing I want to do is go back in my outer corner and like deepen it up again because I kind of lost that depth when I put the shimmer on top. So we're going to go back in with Willow. Willow. We're going to go with the Mantra. Let's get a little bit closer. If you saw me IRL, would you be able to tell I had two different eye looks on? I actually prefer the way this eye came out. I think the way the shimmers are laying on my eyelid are a lot more flattering, which isn't something I always necessarily care about. Like a lot of times I'm just using makeup as a means of expression. In this case, I actually do like the way this looks a lot better. This one I feel like is a bit more like thick and chunky. Like I would have had to really change my application technique to achieve a similar effect. For the purpose of this video, I just wanted to see like, is it actually a dupe? And the other interesting thing is, even though shades look similar when they were swatched, they do look different when they're applied. And sometimes it's those very subtle differences really make or break a palette for me. Like, two shades can swatch almost identical. It's those like tiny nuances that make me reach for something again and again. So even though something looks like a dupe at a swatch, it doesn't mean it's always necessarily a dupe. In particular, this mustardy shade right here is really looking different to me on each eye. And Celesta is reading as a lot more of a yellow gold to me, whereas this shade Plantasia is more of a soft, like twinkly, neutral gold, and then Caesium is just like so foiled and opaque, whereas Komorebi is more of a twinkly, soft shade again. This area I think looks indistinguishable to me. And then Fauna and Macchia, I don't think there's enough surface area to really detect a difference. Like, overall, I think this palette did add to my collection. Maybe not everyone would agree with me on that, but I'm happy I picked it up.
So I'm actually going to post a poll on my Instagram stories right now, and I'm going to let you guys vote which one you think is the Yucca palette and which one's the dupe, and then by the time I edit this video, I will share the results.
So that's going to be it for this video. I hope it was entertaining. I hope maybe cure you of some FOMO, because if you have a decent sized collection, you probably have a similar shade to most shades in this palette. But either way, if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're not already. Like I said before, I'll be back in a couple weeks with a review on this palette, but in the meantime I'll be uploading regularly, chatting about other things, so definitely subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Bye.